what did you make of the big speech?
Yeah, it was weak. It was probably the worst, I would say, address that I've seen for a acceptance, at least that I can recall. But it was still a good speech. I mean, relative to, if you went to a convention and there were 1 million speakers, it would probably be in the the top half of those speeches. But let's put it this way: I've been to some events for college kids where you see much better speeches than that. So it was not bold. It was not big. There was nothing new in it. She completely ignored her own record. The first 20 minutes were incredibly sleepy. I was playing with stuff like Yanala as a headline and Bombala. Like, is she going to bomb? I was playing with that stuff. But then she picked up the pace, and it was pretty intense for the last third. But that's just when it comes to rhetoric, Mike. I think in terms of content, it was just loaded with lies. There's some passages that have been passed around, and I always recommend this to people, is if you've got the time, and you should on these big moments, I mean, these are once every 4 years, it's worth watching it for body language, rhetoric, style, but then try to read some of it. There's some of these quotes that are being passed around are just so loaded with deceit, and they're so dishonorable. And they're so just loaded with lies that it is like I got a part in front of me right now, and this part has been clips of this have been going around. Consider not only the chaos and the calamity when he was in office, talking about Trump, but also the gravity of what happened since he lost the last election. Donald Trump tried to throw away your votes. When he failed, he sent an armed mob to the U.S. Capitol where they assaulted law enforcement officers. Like, none of that's true. It wasn't calamity after he gave up the office. He didn't send any armed people. The only person who got shot and killed was by a cop. And then she continues, his explicit intent to jail journalists. He's the one jailed journalists. Kamala went after David Daleiden, which we pointed out. She was the one who wanted to go after a journalist. She continues, political opponents and anyone he sees as an enemy. His explicit intent to deploy our active duty military against our own citizens. It's just baloney, just total horse crap. And she's much more likely to get us into World War III than he ever would be, if you want to talk about protecting our troops. And he had the military at his disposal. He could have deployed the National Guard during the riots that she was encouraging, and he didn't do that. And then it goes on that she basically indicates she's going to pack the Supreme Court, and it's just there's fantasizing about Trump fascism, and that's all of it was just not great. It was just not great, and there's a version of this, there's an analysis of this, Mike, where it was sort of upsetting if you read it. So it was bad. I thought it was a bad speech.
The speech was last night. I was in bed and then woke up early this morning to read the speech. So Alex and I have not had time to compare notes. So I'm always curious whenever you come on to debrief something after, and I'm like, I hope we're on the same page. And I'm glad we are on this, because I was doing the show this morning, and I made the decision to read portions of the speech rather than play portions of the speech. As you alluded to, it's a very different experience that way.
It's funny. I did not know that was one of your broadcasting choices, but that is a choice that we make when we do these shows, is you can read them or you can play them. And the playing is more dynamic when it comes to, the texture of our shows. But sometimes the reading is better, because sometimes they just sound more insane when you read these quotes.
I prefer the reading. First, I think you can get more content in when you read. And I don't know, there's a couple of reasons, but that's what we did. And it was, as we're reading it, I'm like, wow, I don't even know how to debunk this, because I've never heard of this stuff before. Trump plans to create a national anti-abortion coordinator and force states to report on women's miscarriages and abortions. Like, I don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah, what is that?
So, I'm the anti-abortion guy. Like, I'm on it.
Yeah, it was probably some. It was probably some footnote on page 781 of Project 2025, which no one's ever read. The guys who wrote Project 2025 have never read it. Like, no one knows what's in it, and then we just keep getting it that hung around our neck. And no, it's just unbelievable. No, and that's what it was like, and that's why it's actually I started reading it all the way through. I didn't get all the way through. I watched it all the way through, and I read a lot of it. And I'm going to tell you, Mike, I'm a little afraid to read all the way through. I think I might throw up if I read the whole thing. I mean, this is.
Are you talking about her speech or Project 25?
No. That I will never read. I will never read. No, but the speech itself, it really it's a warning. That was a warning, the content of that speech. And it was not pieced together by this woman who is a party apparatchik. This is the vision for a radical political party that wants to bring us back to globalism, that demonizes the people in this audience. They spent the whole week trying to talk about how terrible we are. And they think that anyone who understands Trump's appeal, you don't even have to love him, but even if you understand his appeal, is a threat to democracy when they just put someone in charge of their party without a single vote. So these people are nuts, and they need to be defeated.
One last point on the past. Yesterday, or 2 days ago, Clinton said that she has taken on transnational gangs. And then Walz came back and said she's taken down transnational gangs. Do you have any idea what they're talking about?
So good. Mike, this is the frustration that I've got a whole newsroom that can do fact checks, and it's like I can't do it. I don't have enough. I don't have 75 writers. Like, I don't have enough people. The fact, it's just not, it is. This is like how one of my favorite moments of the whole convention was the back-to-back Bernie Sanders, literally back-to-back Bernie Sanders complaining about the millionaires and billionaires. And then the next speaker is J.B. Pritzker, who is from a family that's been incredibly wealthy for 150 years, and he inherited a bunch of money from the Hyatt hotels, to come out and say that he's the real billionaire and not Trump. Like bragging about his billionaire. Yeah, I know how to be a billionaire, not Trump. Yeah. And it's like, who are these people? How can they do this with a straight face? And will the public see through it when it's all filtered through people like Jake Tapper, who's basically orgasming last night, and Rachel Maddow, who's basically orgasming last night? They're acting like this is the second coming of Jesus Christ. And it's not. It's just not that good. She's not that good. They're not that good. No, not one of them is that good. And then the media spins it as if, well, Democrats think they're going to win now. There's no way anyone actually watched that speech last night and thought it was that great. It just wasn't. It was lukewarm. It was mediocre. And yet you're going to be treated to a full weekend of Democrats are back, baby. They got this.
All right, you will remember where you were when you heard this speech tonight from the Vice President of the United States.
Where were you?
Yeah, I was. I had successfully passed off 3 of the 4 children, and then I was holding Duchess Marlow Jr., who was falling asleep. And I guess that was the highlight of the speech for me.
Holding your daughter.
Yeah.
Last point on the speech. I saw this coming a couple days ago, and I wasn't sure how they were going to pull it off. And I mean, they didn't pull it off, but they tried. But a couple days ago, it was 4 days ago, New York Times had a headline. Here it is. Kamala Harris's muscular patriotism.
Yeah.
In recent weeks, the vice president's message has revolved around progressive patriotism. And a lot of American flags in the audience. And her whole last part of her speech, I don't think I have it queued up here. It's like, we're going to fight for this country we love and like live up to the responsibility of this country that we love so much. You're like, whoa. What's the play here? And can they pull that one off?
Yeah, so they care so much about image, and part of the way they control this is they use the tactic of projection, which is when you basically attribute your own shortcomings or your own limitations to your opponent. And she clearly is, part of it is physical stuff, that she's a woman, she's got a high-pitched voice, and she's not big. And does not have a ton of experience. She's going to have that burden to convince people that she should be in the room with Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin. Mm. So what the media has to do, who's deeply invested in this election now, because without the media, Joe Biden would have been the nominee. Biden would have lost, but then at least the blame would have only been on Biden. So now they're all pot committed. So they have to get her across. So you could not have watched the first 20 minutes of that speech and thought this person is strong enough to be the commander-in-chief of the United States Armed Forces and to do arguably the most important task, which is national security, foreign policy issues. Her number one task is not vibes. Her number one task is not trying to pass stuff with the legislative body to get a domestic agenda. Even though we all get wrapped up in that stuff, her number one thing is to represent America and our interests around the world. And obviously you couldn't look at her and think this is the best person in the country to do this. And it's not just a sexism thing. I mean, Hillary's much more, she had much more gravitas in that way, even though I've never been a fan of hers. But they have to act like she does because they have no other choice, because it's a huge limitation in her, and it's going to be a turnoff for a lot of voters.
That's a great point. A theme from, I guess let's wrap up the convention maybe. Is this going to create a nice little surge? Anything big come out of it? Anything of note otherwise?
I don't know. I normally know, or at least feel like I've got a strong yes. And I don't this time because history would tell you conventions always give you a bump. I thought this was nearly the best case scenario for Republicans overall. I thought the first night was the worst night of a convention I'd ever seen. I could spend a lot of time on why that was. And then I thought the Obamas underachieved, and I thought that they were more divisive, more angry, less charismatic than usual, so I thought that was good. They didn't bring out any superstars. In fact, they had a hoax last night where they had basically promised Beyonce, and then she didn't show up. So all of that is very favorable. I mean, Clinton looking old and decrepit. Hillary was shrill, and all of her talking points were 30 years old. I mean, we got a lot. And the bench yesterday. Yesterday was the bench day, and Gretchen Whitmer and Mark Kelly. I mean, these was total snooze fest. So that was good. I thought the rhetoric in Tim Walz's speech was exceptional. I thought, again, the content was, one lie after the next. I think he's a total phony, but terrific speech in terms of speech class. Like if you were in speech and debate class, like that would be how you deliver a speech. If people miss that one, but overall, I thought we did pretty well in terms of them looking on their back foot and them not taking advantage of the platform. So I just hope people actually watched it and not the news coverage of it, because there's a huge wipeout of conservative media in social media and on search engines in particular.